So this is the teardown and final thoughts on this, the Novrich SSE-18. So we'll do the teardown video and then we'll come back and we'll have a chat about my final thoughts. So a fairly easy disassembly actually, more simple than I was expecting, at least to get down to the gearbox level. When I looked at this before, I thought there was only 3 pins in the body, 1, 2, 3, plus this large cross pin here. But in actual fact, there's a cheeky little one in the base plate as well that's tied into the motor. Interestingly, what you usually find with these pins that hold the body together, focus, is that there's a right way and a wrong way, because one side of it will be splined, and that isn't particularly obvious on these, and these came out actually without too much difficulty, and while they are splined, and so there is a right way to punch them through and a wrong way to punch them through, I have to say the level of splinage on them is so minimal that actually it makes a little difference. Comparing it to a Marui AEP gearbox, which I've been in many times, the actual plastic that's used, this purple plastic, again it feels of a much lower quality than the Marui one. These little O-rings, nice bit of silicone oil on them, I have to say, quite nicely lubricated. Difficult to fault that. Again, just not quite to the same, the seam lines on it are just not quite the same level, which probably affects air seals and whatnot. And then when you get down to the actual gearbox itself, quite nice, I have to say. I quite like this black finish. I don't know if that makes a jot of difference. Fairly generic looking motor, as I suspected, and I think this replacement one here will be of a much higher quality, as I suspected. Relatively easy to swap them over. So what we'll do is we'll break the gearbox down. These gears look nice, nicely oiled. This is how you can test an AEP or gearbox by hand, because they're usually so low powered. You can turn the gearbox over by hand, so you don't have to connect it up to test it. There you go, bang. Always makes you jump a little bit when it goes, but there you go. Not quite sure about the quality of these metal components. So this is the, what was this? I think that's the tappet. I think that's that moves the piston back and forward. No, it doesn't. It moves the, oh, I forget what it's called, the thing that allows the BB to get into the chamber. That moves that back and forward. These have a tendency to fail. You can get a hardened version. My goodness, there's that storm brewing outside. But this is, these can fail because they're under quite a lot of stress. The other difference the biggest difference that I can see between one of the biggest differences is that the fixings are little Phillips screw heads, whereas on the Marui they're a tiny little Torx screw. Very difficult to find the correct Torx. A bit like on a mobile phone, you have to get very fine Torx drivers to run it, whereas this looks a bit more simple to strip down. So we'll do that. I mean, it looks nicely lubricated. It's got this blue lubricant on it here, which is quite nice. A little bit of play in the gears there. Yeah, you can see that there. The tolerances of that are pretty poor. So that may be worth just shimming, given that it's open. Just tighten up a bit. So we'll see how we get on. See how it lasts against. See how it lasts against the M80 spring and the larger motor. It may be that it just immediately strips the gearbox. It's not up to the level that the Marui ones are. I have to admit, though, as I say, I had a pinion gear strip when I did a similar job on a Marui one. I had to replace it with a stainless steel slot car gear. So we'll get this broken down, get it shimmed, get these parts put in. It'll probably take about an hour, and then reassemble it and see what we're left with. Fingers crossed we end up with a fairly potent little AEP at the end of it. So there we go, we're into the gearbox now. quite a lot of thread lock, quite a lot of adhesive, quite a lot of work to actually get it stripped down in places. It's okay. Aluminium cylinder. It'd be better if that was brass, but it's aluminium cylinder. It's quite cheap, light. You know, doesn't feel like there's much to it. This is, I think, as I get through this, I think this is I'm becoming much more. I think it's much more likely that this is a SEMA product. I've not got a set of files. Actually, I do. Just let me back and hold on for 1 second. But you can skate a file over here, and if it grips, yeah, which it does. So if these were hardened gears, the file would just scrape off them. But actually, it's gripping nicely, and you can see it's starting to mar the surface a little bit. You can see it's starting to mar the surface a little bit as the file goes over it, which suggests to me these are actually fairly cheap gears. So it'll be interesting to see whether they hold up to the M80 spring. I suspect they will fail. I've actually got a spare set of gears as it happens. So yeah, my impression is that compared to Marui Gearbox, compared to Marui AEP, they are essentially incomparable. This is clearly built down to a price, and I've got no problem with that, because money talks, and this is, you know, this is only a €99 product, and it seems to work. I wouldn't, as I say, I'm disappointed with it as a stock item, but we'll see how it gets on with all the components that we're upgrading it with. So the plan was to install this 370 motor here into this gearbox, but there's on this 370, this particular 370 gearbox, and it has made me start to wonder whether this is why I didn't use it in the first place, is it's got this plastic housing on the bottom, on the base of the motor, and what that means is that the motor won't fit into the housing in the gearbox, because it won't reciprocate in half, which is a bit annoying. So what I've done is I've elected to put, I do have a couple of old Marui motors, but to be honest, there's probably not much in it. This one's newer and it's less used, so we'll continue to use this because it's got pinion on it. I'd have to reseat the pinion as well. So we'll try it, we'll see how we get on, and if it needs a different, if I do feel that actually I do want to replace the motor at some point, what I'll do is I will need to try and find one that's just got a simple base on the bottom like that. They did used to make a fantastic 370 motor, but they don't make it anymore because of course most motors have now gone to being brushless DC motors, so difficult to get hold of them now, but we can do the search. We'll see how we get on with this though when we put it all back together. I hope it all doesn't just fly apart when it gets this M80 spring in it. So just tearing down the hop unit as working back up. I've put the M80 spring in here, so we're just reassembling now, but on the way back up I thought we'd have a little look at the barrel and the hop rubber and the hop unit, because it's really indistinct, unlike on the Marui, which is very definite as you make the hop up adjustments. On this it's really quite vague, so I thought we'd have a quick look at the barrel. It's a kind of standard brass barrel. I might just go and lap this on the lathe for a second. It's a little bit mucky inside, as brass tends to get. It does tend to tarnish and oxidize quite easily. So just a couple of minutes on the lathe with some polishing compound, just run that through. Really just brighten it up, at least for a while anyway. That is one of the advantages over aluminium. Debate in the comments. The hop up unit, unlike the Marui, is metal, which I quite like. There's a little bit of stability there. It seems to be that the torque on this hop arm here though, which protrudes, let me get something to point with, this hop arm here, because there's probably quite an extensive amount of pressure being put on it, means that it's quite vague and indistinct. I'm just wondering, it's got this quite nice, I have to say, I'll just slide off, yes, off that pin there, quite nice little channel there, which I think is good in terms of just grabbing the BB and keeping it central. Really, really soft rubber here for the hop up, which I guess for 0.2s, 0.25s is fine. But what I was finding when I was setting this up the other day was the hop had to be almost fully on, at least with the standard spring, in order to hop even just a 0.25. I never use anything more than 0.25s. So quite a nice little assembly in terms of the trigger and the hop are all one unit. Quite complex. If stuff starts to fall apart, I think it'd be very easy to get you'd be scratching your head for a while trying to put all this back together. So I'm going to try and keep it together as one assembly. I might just do a little bit of work on this barrel, a couple of minutes on the lathe, and then I might just pop a little bit of silicone on top of this hop rubber, on top of the hop lever, underneath the hop lever and on top of the hop rubber, just to try and add a little more pressure to that, just to see if we can get it to hop a little bit more aggressively than perhaps it has been. Otherwise, we're on the home straight. Having stripped everything down now, is that metal? Yeah, that is metal spring guide. Interesting. Well, it's interesting as you go through it. There's things that are clearly not up to the same standard as Marui products in this. I guess that's no surprise to anyone, is it? But then you come across the odd little bit that you experience, and you think, oh gosh, that's actually quite nice. I mean, this is a good example. I mean, gosh, the plastic couldn't be any thinner or any chintzier. I mean, it's so easy to break this as you're putting it back together. This is not a airsoft gun that's really going to stand, I think, being repeatedly assembled and disassembled without damage. So that's the teardown and the upgrades that I did. Everything went to plan perfectly well, with the exception of the fact that I couldn't put the upgraded motor in it because it wouldn't quite fit. You can see I've made some cosmetic changes as well. I initially tried to take this off with sodium hydroxide because I thought it was anodized, but actually it's painted. So I took it to the sander and I've turned it into, just taken the first layer of black off, and I quite like these stripes. Turns it into a bit more of a race gun looking thing. And for an electric pistol, if you've got a metal slide on it, I quite like to emphasize the fact that you've got a metal slide on there, which is why I stripped it down. I think it looks quite effective. Not for everyone, and you don't have to do that. It's just personal preference, really. Just put some grip tape around the back because, as I said in the first review, the stippling is really just for cosmetic effect. It's not actually that grippy. And I had a little light that was surplus to stock. I had to slightly modify the mounting because the rail on the SSE-18 doesn't come all the way back. So I wanted this to be flush, the light to be flush with the trigger guard. So I've made a slight modification to that so you can get to the button very easily. And then I got a light bearing holster from AliExpress. It came very quickly, actually. I've seen these take weeks and weeks and weeks to come and order stuff from AliExpress. This was here within a week or two. It was a level 3 holster, so I've cut that off and I just sanded the end a little bit. Had to make a couple of little adjustments to make it fit properly, put a little spacer in, but now it's perfect. And it comes out nice and easily. And I like a light. I've got a bit obsessed with putting lights on pistols recently, and I like a mini light rather than a big light. I think that's more than adequate for a pistol. So that works really well. I have to say, I'm not sure how... I do think that the motor was probably more important than it was, but the rate of fire and the snappiness of it is much better now. And I think it's not far off the Marui, which I showed last time. I'll cut in some footage here to show the difference between the speeds now. Fire this. So as you see, much better than it was. And I'm happy with that. I'm not going to do any more with that. I'm not going to start hunting out another motor for it. In terms of holstering it, any kind of Glock 19 or Glock 17 holster will do perfectly, and it is slim, as we've talked about, so it fits in a Glock 19 or 17 holster really well, actually. And these are the knockoff versions of these are really inexpensive on eBay or on the Amazons, and yeah, that works really well. So that's the thing about holsters. If you buy any kind of 17 or 19 holster, it works, and then you can put a light on it, and then that'll go in a light bearing holster. I don't know why I've got obsessed with putting lights on pistols off late. So that's how I would run it from now on. In the footage you'll see it was just didn't have the light on because this holster hadn't arrived yet. What's my final impressions of it? I think, as I said in the first review, it's €99. It's a very inexpensive gun. It is. I did a bit of research. It is a SEMA, and I'll put the comparison gun, which I'll put up on the screen now, is also €99. I think it makes absolutely not a jot of difference whether you buy this gun or you buy the SEMA one. They are ostensibly exactly the same product. This one will be branded Novrich, which you'll see down on the grip here, but I've put a bit of tape on it. And I have to say, the Novrich customer service is very good, and you're probably going to get better after sales support. It's hard to criticize them. Saying that, they did say they would send me a replacement pin for this when I contacted them under warranty, which of course they should, but it's actually not turned up. And as I said in the last one, I machined another pin, so it's not really an issue. But communication seems to be good, and the after sales is very good. So a couple of people in the comments said, what would you recommend? Would you recommend this, or would you recommend the Marui? And this is getting a bit niche, although I have to say, if you're watching this video, you probably are into niche electric airsoft pistols. And to be honest, it depends how much of a deep dive you want to do. Something like a Marui USP, or I've not got this, but I'd really like the look of it, the Marui M92F airsoft electric pistol. Had there been an M92 on the market when I first bought this, I would have bought it, because I really like the M92. I think it's got a really nice 1980s vibe to it, and we all want to be John McClane from Die Hard deep in our hearts, don't we? So I would certainly never turn down an M92, but it just wasn't around, and that would make a really good gun to start to upgrade as well. The thing I would say is, what you could do without doing anything with the SSE-18 is you could just put one of the a small 11.1 LiPo in it. Now that would, I suspect, invalidate the warranty. Not that Novrich would ever know if you sent it back if it failed because you were running it on a higher voltage battery, but it's a bit of a skeevy thing to do, if I'm honest. But you could just do that, and that would sparkle the gun. You would find the power was a bit down, and the other, and again, I apologise. What did people really want to know? They wanted to know what this was shooting at with a bigger spring in it. I'm not going to show you the chrono because my chrono setup is not particularly elegant, but when I've chronoed it on 0.2s, it was coming in at about 250 FPS, and I'm very happy with that for this gun. As I say, I don't think this is shooting much beyond that. I think it's maybe 270, 280. And when it was brand new, when I first did the upgrades and replaced all the O-rings and greased them, I was just about getting 300 FPS. And I'll put a link to a very old video of Rich at Eagle 6 doing the same thing and touching 300 FPS. But the amount of work that you need to do is eye-watering. Nice holiday project or nice retirement project, but certainly not if you're busy, if you've got a proper job. So I probably wouldn't. What would I do if money and time were infinite? Absolutely, I would buy a Toki Marie, and I would upgrade it in the way that I've discussed, and that would be my electric pistol. However, if you're doing it on a budget, or actually you don't want to spend that money or the time, what I would do is I would buy this. I would stick a because it comes with a metal slide. It's got a nice fiber optic sight. Yes, the internals probably are not up to the same standard. The tolerances are certainly not up to the same standard on this. It's just at a different price point, and it's a different quality product. It's made in China. Nothing wrong with stuff made in China, but this is made in Japan, and you can very much tell in terms of the engineering. If you want to not spend the money, and why would you? It's a toy gun. This does everything that this does. It just doesn't do it quite as elegantly or quite as well. But stick an 11.1 in it and do nothing else to it. The trigger response will be good, and the rate of fire on full auto will be fantastic as well. Don't put an extended mag on it. I think you look like an idiot. But that's just me. I like to just put the 30 round magazine in. It's twice as much as you'd get in a real gun anyway. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Put the 11.1 in, it'll be snappy, it'll work, it'll just be a little underpowered. If you're using it as a backup, if you're a sniper or DMR like I am, then really all you're looking for is something to cover that 20 to 30 meter engagement range when you can't use your primary. And this is good for that, because you can suppress, if you need to suppress somebody to make an escape, because you're never going to win a fight with a sniper rifle, you can pop this in full auto, put down a bit of suppressing fire, pop smoke, and then Foxtrot Oscar out of the area. And that's why I carry an electric pistol, because that's how I play. So it does that fine. The 220 I think is a little underpowered. The travel time for the BB is a little bit long. So the perfect combination I think is to put the 11.1 volt battery in it with the upgraded spring. So there you go. That's all I have to say about that. There's buttons underneath the video. I think I'm supposed to tell you to press. If you enjoyed this, you can come back and there'll be more. I know there's been a bit of a delay in this video. I had some things on, but we'll try and get a bit more regular. I've got a lot of footage that I need to process now. So do that. Leave comments. I've enjoyed reading your comments, actually. I think they've been quite insightful, very pleasant. Thank you very much. I've not really done much of this type before, so it's nice to engage with the community. I think lots of people have said it's quite niche, and they're probably right. Electric pistols are quite niche. And my thoughts on using electric airsoft guns rather than HPA or any of the other, or gas, I just don't see why you would use anything other than elastic trickery. And I drive an electric car, so there you go. You can generate the same power on an electric gun now. All my DMRs are electric, and they shoot 450 FPS perfectly. We can do a little review on them. We could grab one in a second. And kind of coming up next time, we can look at this beautiful M14 here, and that's 450 FPS as an electric gun. So we could do that. We could do that as the next time review. If people are interested, so leave a comment, press the buttons below, and see you next time.